Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Amala Epinobi, and today we are getting into what is probably going to be a very spicy topic. Jubilee dropped its newest middle ground, and it is Israel v. Palestine, and they actually brought together Israelis and Palestinians to discuss this ongoing conflict that's happening in the Middle East, to give their take, and to hopefully humanize both sides of this current conflict and see if we can find some middle ground, hence the name of the show. Now, we do have some exciting news on the show today because Taylor is with us, but he's not in Nashville. He's here in LA.
Here in a corner of the studio that has like 3 square feet of space that I'm sitting in, about 5 feet from Amala. But we're doing it, guys. Yeah. We're actually here. So glad I can be here for one of the most difficult topics that we could possibly imagine trying to broach. But hey, here we go.
Yeah, I saw this Jubilee come out and I'm like, okay, we got to do what we got to do. Jubilee middle ground is our thing on this show. We're not going to, shy away from any of these topics. I do want to say, I know many of you are going to have very strong opinions on the Israeli side, on the Palestinian side. It is totally okay that you drop that in the comments, but do not spam the comments with whatever side you will be supporting. We will take care of spam comments. It doesn't matter which side you support. And on that note, what we want to accomplish with this video and with this reaction is truly, 1, trying to find middle ground, 2, trying to understand both sides of this ongoing conflict. And yes, we might come to some conclusions here and be able to express our opinions. Taylor and I might disagree. You might disagree with something we have to say. But we want to prove that we're able to sit down and talk about these things and have a discussion, even though we know it's hard, even though we know that this is a devastating thing that's happening right now. Let's bear that in mind and try to have, free-flowing dialogue on the issues. And I encourage you guys in the chat to speak to one another, reply to one another, let each other know how you feel. In this time, with everything going on, there is a lot of propaganda. There's a lot of very strong feelings. I can tell you right now, I'm swayed constantly by things that I see in the news, which can or cannot be real. I see a lot of propaganda on social media, a lot of things that are true on social media. So as we go through this video, I'm just going to tell you how I feel, and Taylor's going to tell you how he feels. But more so than anything, we're going to emphasize the stories of the Israelis and Palestinians who have come together to speak about this. So, with that being said, anything else you want to add, Taylor?
Yeah, just that. I mean, the spirit of these middle grounds is to learn something new about someone else's perspective, and not to just have your own opinions aired and validated, or to beat the other side into submission just by force of rhetoric. It's really to try to foster understanding. And so, hopefully we're all coming into this with an open mind, and we'll be thinking out loud, processing it as we go through it. But I'm looking forward to hopefully learning something new from these different perspectives.
Yeah, and I can talk about, where I maybe stand as of now, or what I had seen that influenced my opinion as we got more and more news about this. I also want to make it very clear, not many of us cared at all to talk about Israel and Palestine before all of this happened. So bear that in mind, right? And there's also a lot of other world tragedies that are happening right now that are not getting a peep of news coverage, let alone are we sitting and arguing about them on the internet. But with that perspective in mind, I'll tell you where I was at. When I heard about what happened on October 7th, it sounded absolutely devastating. It was crazy to watch all of the news coverage that was coming out, the videos that were being shared on social media. I quite literally had to just put my phone down for a while because it was just so barbaric, some of the things that I was seeing. That being said, the response to it in many ways have shaken me in the exact same way. And I have my feelings about what we view as retaliation, what is rightful retaliation, and we'll talk about that throughout this episode. And I know many will disagree on that. There are some people that think, due to what happened on October 7th, Israel has every right to defend itself in whatever way it sees fit. Me personally, I don't like war. I don't like conflict. So I'm always keeping that in mind with what Hamas was capable of on October 7th and what the Israeli government is doing now. And I do like to emphasize the stories of those who have actually experienced it, and that's what we're going to do today on this. Taylor, do you want to share where you're at currently, or you want to wait till we're through the episode?
Broadly, I'd say largely in the same boat. I think two wrongs don't make a right, but you can keep going back with that, and I don't like anybody justifying wrong acts of violence. I think we should have it's the same standard applied across the board, which is act justly, and by no means is both sides completely innocent on that, and what country or population is. But I'm trying to come into this with a fair-minded, let's apply first principles and say and look at it from the lens of wrongdoing should be condemned no matter who's doing it.
Yeah. Okay. So with that said, let's get into today's middle ground, guys.
I don't think that, a Palestinian and Israeli would meet each other on the street or in a bar.
It's so important to me to constantly be listening and connecting with people who have a different stake in this game from the other side.
Sitting in the presence of everyone, you kind of get to feel more of what they're feeling.
And I think that it's what we all need right now to humanize the so frequently dehumanized.
Obviously, there's two sides to this discussion, and the only way out is through.
I have lost someone in the war.
First of all, I consider everyone in.
Is this sped up still? I think people are saying in the chat it's.
Oh, sorry. Let me slow that down.
Amala watches everything on 2x speed, guys. So
Let's slow it down. Sorry, guys.
Extended member of my family.
Let's go back so you can hear his initial statements. Okay, so the prompt was, I have lost someone in the war. Normally, of course, we respond to these things. I'm not going to respond to this. I have no connection to this personally. And that's another thing to keep in mind here when we're talking about this. I don't have a connection to this personally, even though I'm like seeing the news and everything that's going on. I want to emphasize their positions. Let's go.
And bear with us on this camera situation, guys, where we've got the little circle because I'm using Amla's second camera angle. So
We're figuring everything out as we go here, guys. Okay.
First of all, I consider everyone in Gaza or Palestine to be an extended member of my family, but I actually lost 23 extended members of my family. In
23 is crazy. 23 is huge.
And for me, in the West Bank, where my family lives, I lost one of my cousins who was simply coming home from work at our family grocery store and just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time and ended up getting shot by an Israeli soldier that was posted up on the corner looking for someone and shot him, and he immediately died.
Sorry to hear that.
I'm so sorry.
Two friends who got killed at a massacre. Actually, one of them, her burned body just was recognized a few days ago, 40-something days after. And they actually bury a little part of the leg. That was the only thing that was left. But I have a list of tens of friends who got killed, because it's a long war, I guess. It didn't start on October 7th, from my point of view, I guess.
Absolutely not, yeah.
And yeah.
Sorry for your loss.
Yeah.
I lost friends at Nova, one of the nature parties that was attacked. It's actually another nature party that was also attacked called Psyduck, which not a lot of people really know about.
It's a smaller party.
Smaller party, yeah.
I was there.
Yeah, I mean, Nova was the same location of my first nature party in 2012. I've been going to them since then. And to say the community was devastated is really an understatement. It was just horrible. It's really what it was.
Sorry for your loss, too.
Thanks.
I lost a lot of friends that day, on October 7th. One of them was my best friend. One of my best friends, her name was Mo. She was with us at the beach that day. And she went home to her mother, and on the way home, hundreds of terrorists caught her and shot her dead. Two friends of mine that was on the Nova, Supernova Music Festival also died there, and they were murdered right on the spot, and they found their body just dumped somewhere inside Gaza 2 weeks after. And one of my best friends, big brother, being called that day by the army to help the people of the village of Be'eri, which got taken by Hamas terrorists. And when he went there with his unit, he died there, leaving behind a wife that they married maybe 1 year ago. And my mom's best friend, I have a daughter that was married to a guy named Itai. He was also in the army. And on the second day, he went to Zikim, where I was, on the beach. And he also died there, along with his two best friends. And Since October 7, I lost too many people.
I'll pause there. There's just so much, I think, trauma built into this whole situation and for every single person. And what I can say is it's weird to call it a beautiful thing to witness in the wake of everything that's happened, but that the fact that, all from both sides can sit and talk about this sort of shared loss, it does humanize both sides, which I've seen a lot of just lack of humanity on the internet, and specifically from people who have no direct connection to the current conflict that's happening. It's very easy to watch something happen, get a few bits of information, pick your side, and go, it doesn't matter what happens to the other side in this case, and just completely dehumanize and throw them out. I've seen people on the Free Palestinian side do that towards Israelis. I've seen people on the Israeli side do that towards Palestinians. And when you realize that even though people have different backgrounds, they have different religious beliefs, they have a life and a culture that may be totally separate from ours, they still experience family and friendship in the very same way that we do. They build just as deep connections as we do, and you get to actually hear from them and hear them say it. I hope it takes a little bit of the hot air out of the situation when it comes to judgment of other people, because what these individuals are sharing right now, it's not necessarily, my brother was part of the Israeli government and during the war conflict they died. We're talking about like innocent civilians mixed in with the people who are actually, maybe pushing this conflict or fighting on behalf of this conflict. And that is true for the Palestinian side. It is true for the Israeli side. And that's always something that's so important to remember. From the space that I'm sitting in right now, I cannot fathom the things that they're talking about. Like, I can hear it, and I understand that this is loss, and I understand that it means losing friends and losing families. One of them saying 23, this young Israeli guy giving a laundry list of people that he's lost. But I cannot fathom what that loss feels like. And to know that every day and to constantly be scared, I simply do not understand, and I don't wish that upon anyone. So it is very interesting to hear, and I'm glad that they started with a prompt of loss so that it brings down the heat of the situation a little bit, although I think it's going to spike back up as we talk about the inner workings of this conflict. But at the very least, we can acknowledge that these people don't deserve to be going through this. Nobody deserves to be going through this, and this is not a life for anyone.
And just keep counting.
Yeah, I think we all can agree that we've all been doing that since October 7th. I have a lot of friends where I live in Washington, D.C., who have their direct family members in Gaza right now. They left for studying or jobs, and every day having to hear them frantically try to call to see if their families are alive. One of them, his brother was one of the last standing nurses at Al-Shifa Hospital up until just last week. He finally left. The uncertainty when it's like your immediate family, I think it's debilitating, and, it puts you into a tunnel where you only can see your grief, but it's obvious that the grief is everywhere, and we're all feeling the same things, and, none of it should have happened, and none of it should be happening, which is why I think a conversation like this right now is extremely important so that we can all understand that.
And to your point, when you see it happening to your family, I'm sure friends, probably a similar feeling, it settles at a much deeper level. We have a family group chat, a lot of my relatives my aunts are in Egypt. So we have a family group chat, and when events transpired and you start seeing the group chat transform from checking in on each other and the regular, memes and banter to, have you guys checked in? Have you heard from them? Oh, we haven't heard in 3 days. The electricity's been out. When I started seeing that on my WhatsApp group, like I said, I consider everyone in Palestine and any innocent humans really to be part of our extended family. But that just resonates at a much deeper level.
I've been sitting with a lot of guilt, being the only, American Palestinian of my cousins. My family made it out. My dad wanted, to give us a better life. And so, he brought my mom here. I was born and raised here. But when I was a teenager, we moved back, and I lived in Palestine. So it was a shock to see how the occupation affected our daily lives, and I was 13, but coming from Ohio, from like the Midwest, everything is open and free, and then here you are like going to the grocery store and there's tanks rolling down the street, soldiers with guns walking around. Then some days like we couldn't go to school because they would close the checkpoints and close the border, like you're not going today. And as a child, I thought that was kind of cool, like, oh, I don't have to go to school today. But I look back now and I'm like, that's kind of messed up.
How long ago did you move out? Like, did you guys move out from West
Palestine?
Bank?
It was in the 90s, the mid-90s.
Nice. I grew up in southeast Jerusalem. And I remember actually in the beginning of the 90s, we used to go to Kalkilia and Jenin. And we used to do shopping over there because it was cheaper, And we used to eat hummus over there and...
Good hummus, huh?
A lot, bro. A lot.
Knafe.
My favorite, knafe, So I actually even understand some of the language. I grew up in a place with a lot of Israeli Muslims. And you're right. It was. I remember actually it was a great time in the 90s in that area when everything got more complicated into the second Intifada. When I started my military time, I was 4.5 years in the military. I was Special Ground Forces. I know Gaza, like I know my hand, and the problems of closing checkposts and everything. It started only in the end of the 90s. Because I'm talking about dramatically because of a lot of terrorist attack that happened in Israel. So in the beginning of the Intifada in 2000, it was impossible for Jewish people, obviously, to get into Jenin or obviously the entire West Bank. But before that, we could because before that, we didn't have that many terrorist attacks. So the occupation from the way we see it, occupation, I don't call it occupation. I call it protect your country from some terrorist organization, extremist.
I think you called it right.
I will be the last person that will say it's a whole group because I have a lot of Muslim friends up until today.
Okay, so a lot of interesting things unpacked there. He said, I don't know that I would call it the whole group because I know Muslims who do not support what's happening right now with Hamas and their leadership. I was always curious, like when he said, I think you called it right, was he saying you called it right and that it is an occupation the first time, or you called it right in saying that it's not an occupation? I don't know. I think throughout this video, they will go at each other quite a bit. So I think he meant you called it right the first time when you referred to it as an occupation. And this I go like so back and forth on in the reading that I've seen and listening to people who have knowledge about what's going on right now. Like I can grant through the different lenses that you could look at this conflict, the different ways that you would see it. From the Palestinian side, if you're going all the way back to the Nakba, which for those of you who don't know what that is, that was a large displacement of Palestinians into Gaza, into the West Bank. I think 750,000 Palestinians were displaced, and some of them decided to, just go before things got crazy. Others were forced to go, and many were killed within their homes. And to me, if you're defining an occupation, that sounds like an occupation to me. Now, it seems like he's saying, the Nakba happens, this occupation occurs, but things were relatively okay. And then terrorist attacks start beginning, and then we start instating checkpoints. So it just depends on like where historically how far you're going back, at what point you think things are settled, and then the conflict starts up again, and then you'll hear people argue from the first and second Intifada, which happens after the Nakba. I don't know, guys. I don't know. What I can say is that the Nakba and what happened there, if I'm getting the proper characterization of what happened, does not sound okay. After that, these different terrorist attacks that occur based on where you're looking at the timeline also do not sound okay. And if I am an Israeli, or, a part of the IDF or IDF leadership, and you're getting constant, terrorist attacks from jihadists and fundamentalists, then what else are you going to do other than say we have to handle what's happening right now to our people, regardless of how you feel about, the displacement or the moving of Palestinians? Yeah, the flip side being, I try to put myself in the place of being a Palestinian. And what if here in the United States, an outside force came in and said, this is our land now, you're gonna be displaced, you're gonna have to move out of your home? How would I respond to that? What would be the thing that I would do? Of course, I'm gonna leave because I don't want to. I think the first thing I'm gonna step out of the situation for a second. But I don't know how I would feel personally about what happens. Not that I'm saying that I would advocate for terrorism, but I could see Americans being like, hell no, you're not coming into our land. You are not taking my house. And I could see other people fighting back very forcefully to that.
Yeah, and of course the great irony and all that is the U.S. kind of did that to the Native Americans in a manner of speaking,
respect,
and they were, and I think a lot of them waged war and on the settlers,
yes.
And that beyond, of course, the disease and other things. I mean, but anyways, this whole conversation, you're never just having one debate, because
right.
As soon as you say, well, the occupation of Gaza is justified because of the imminent threat of not Islamic, but jihadist violence, then you can quickly reframe that and say, well, that's a reaction to the occupation that happened in the first place. And like each side can keep reframing things and say, well, we needed a state to retreat to because we had just lost 6 million people in the Holocaust, and the global sentiment was such that it was worth allowing millions of Jews to settle this land, even though that came at the expense of displacing 750,000 people. So you can keep doing this reframing game and kind of never get anywhere. But to your point earlier, I like that they started this debate with kind of this humanizing angle of what you've lost and what that means to you. Because if there is hope for a peaceful future between these two peoples, it's going to be because the moderate voices prevailed and the people who are committed to making a state that is, or whether it's a two-state solution, whether it's one. I mean, I'm not proposing to claiming to have the answer, of course, but we need the moderate voices to prevail, and not the extreme Zionists or the radical jihadis either. And just conversations like these are the best hope we have, and we say that about a lot of different topics, whether that these Jubilee debates explore. Yeah,
and then we've been grappling with the fact of is this possible, right? Given the two extreme views, and some more extreme than others, is it possible? Will peace prevail in the Middle East, or will it be this just constant back and forth? Because one thing I can say I don't see happening is I don't see jihadists going, you know what? You're right. We're gonna chill out, and we're not gonna attack anybody anymore. I mean, reading Hamas's charter is super scary to read, as well as statements from other jihadist groups fully separate from Hamas. I'm like, does that ever end? Also, does an Israeli claim to Holy Land ever end? Probably not. Although we can view that as being maybe less extreme than something that is written in the Hamas's charter. How do you solve that? Unless both people can go, you know what, we're gonna both live on this land and we're gonna coexist with one another. But then it's like with so many things, one group of extremely radical people ruin it for the entire population. And I struggle to think that there is a way in which that extreme group of people decides to die down and to settle the situation. So with that, we're gonna keep watching.
Even from back in the days, and even childhood friends that I grew up with. So my past is very rich with the Muslim Arabs, Israeli Arabs culture, but in my opinion is super strong, because I felt it different between the 90s and the terrorist attack that happened because of the Hamas. Obviously, they woke up the monster. Let's put it that way.
Interesting choice of wording.
Okay, so I didn't step up because, well, my mom and dad know people who have been victims. I had the privilege of being born and raised in Detroit and spending 2-3 months at a time on multiple occasions in the West Bank. So that's why I didn't step up.
What was your name?
Talal.
Talal, what you said when you first stepped down, that, everyone there is your family. I feel that way as a Jew about Israel, but I didn't want to take away from who I'm sure had real personal connections. But we feel it deeply, everything that we see. And of course, I know many people who live in Israel who thank God we're not in the South on October 7th and who are okay right now, thank God, but we're checking in, and everybody knows somebody. It's like we're all 1 degree away from tragedy. So that's why I disagreed.
I didn't lose anyone, but I did get married in Palestine. I'm not going to say which village to protect my ex-husband. But before we got married, he was arrested. His village was attacked by the IDF, and he threw a rock this big at an Israeli tank and was arrested for 4 years, where he was beaten, tortured, starved. And according to his family, I didn't know him at the time. He never came out the same. And even after we got married, asking him the questions and, what happened and how was it in jail, and you could see the fear in his eyes and you could just feel his pain. And a lot of people don't realize that a lot of Palestinians that get arrested are never put on a fair trial.
That's actually not true, what you're saying here. It's not true.
2/3 of Palestinians are not put on trial. They're not charged.
They are.
Yeah,
they are.
They're just held captive and hostage.
I just told you what happened to my
personal.
If they did a crime, they're going
Is
to
she
a trial.
lying?
They always win. It's always a trial in
Is
Israel.
she lying?
I'm
Yeah.
giving you a personal
Yes.
account of what happened to my husband. This isn't a source or a website or a video.
What are you going to do in that situation? Like, what is there to say? I don't know. It very well could be that is what happened to your husband. It also could be that you're lying. I would beware of anybody who unequivocally says you're absolutely lying. That never happens, because even in a system that runs pretty well, we have flaws. The American system has many flaws, and our criminal justice system has many a flaw. So I would never state that it always happens or anything like that. So I'm curious to see how they clear this up. But she's giving a personal anecdote. I don't know what else you can say.
Yeah, and by the same token, that kind of goes both ways. You can't say, it's hard to say I have this direct experience of injustice in my family, and therefore all other Israel and everybody else that they've ever prosecuted is equally unjust.
Right.
So you can't paint with such broad brushstrokes, but that's also, he shouldn't invalidate her experience if he has no direct evidence to say anything to the contrary. So
100%.
you just, again, in the spirit of good faith conversation, you have to just come to the table and be willing to listen and entertain things that disagree.
And then I think we hear this Palestinian guy say 2/3 of Palestinians arrested do not get a fair trial. That's a very, very big statement. 2/3. It's a huge, 66.66% are not getting a trial. I don't know if it's true, and I don't know how you would verify whether or not that's happening. I guarantee if you ask somebody within the Israeli government whether or not everybody's getting a fair trial, they're going to say everybody's getting a fair trial. If you ask somebody within a Palestinian territory, or go to Al Jazeera or something like that, they're going to say people are not getting a fair trial. I don't know how to confirm that.
And the poor people at Jubilee are pretty good usually at doing fact checking and adding little tidbits. But, bless their heart in this situation. How do you even begin to try to verify a claim like that?
Yeah. So what I wish would happen is that, okay, let's say I cannot personally, I have no evidence right here to verify what I'm saying to you right now. You have no evidence right now to verify what you're saying to me. Can we all agree that if this situation did occur, if it did happen, that would be wrong? Can you say that? And then you get an answer from them. And they say, maybe I don't believe that has happened, but if it did happen, I think that would be wrong. And then we can move on to the next thing. Or they can say they think it wouldn't be wrong if that was the situation. I think that would clear things up, so we're not just continuing to battle back and forth over something that nobody can verify.
I think that's a personal story. I think basically what he's saying is that according to our law, which maybe it's not necessarily always upheld, that according to our law, and if it was to be discovered, there'd be mass protests. We don't with that as a people, and the law legally states that they would have to be a trial. I think
You
that's what
don't.
he's
Not
saying.
everybody's like that in Israel, to be fair.
That's fair.
So what about the children that are imprisoned? Do they go through due trial? A 12-year-old, a 13-year-old, a 14-year-old?
All of them go to trial.
Is there any trial that justifies
your sources
children
and
to
then
be
come
held in
I'm
prison
giving
for
you,
years?
I'm telling you right now that my ex-husband did not get a fair trial.
Why? Because it was
And
4
then
years there?
you took his situation, and I'm not taking away from your situation like you did with mine. You took our personal experience and situation, and with all due respect, made it about you. When an Israeli tank attacks a Palestinian village, are all Palestinians supposed to lay there and just take it?
Okay, so we know the prisons are filled with children. They're terrorists too. They're
If you threw
murderers.
a rock, if you threw a rock, if you threw a rock, you're a terrorist.
Yeah. Oh, if you throw a rock, you're a terrorist.
If you attack us, if you attack with
This
rocks,
is called. This is
you're
the
gonna be in
prime
jail.
example of not.
So this is coming from my very U.S. perspective, okay, guys? And I'm trying to think of like a similar situation. I'm trying to think like if a police officer shows up in your neighborhood or things are getting out of control and a citizen throws a rock at a police officer. You're getting arrested, right? You're getting arrested. Is that terrorism? No. To me, that's a very, very bold statement to characterize that as terrorism, and there would need to be more to back it up. And that's the thing. I think that word can be thrown around very, very flippantly. I reserve it for greater acts of terror than throwing a rock at an Israeli tank or a member of the IDF. However, if you were arrested upon throwing a rock at an IDF soldier or something like that, you did throw a rock. Now, does that justify her story of 4 years of imprisonment mixed with torture and all these different things? Absolutely not. But I don't know the inner workings of her story, why that happened, whether or not it happened. I just have to take her word for it in this case. But I do think that the use of the word terrorism is that's a little flippant.
Not having due trial. A trial means you get investigated. You look at the cause of what happened.
No, I
You
don't.
look at the
I don't say that just
situations.
because they're
You can't just say
it's like
anyone.
they have to go through actual due process.
This is the logic. This is the logic of Israel. If you're Palestinian, you're a
I'd
terrorist.
love to say some final words about the actual prompt, if that's okay, because I think it's disrespectful to all the people that we did lose during this war to go down this route right now. I actually broke the news on the Nature Party before any other media outlet from friends that were there. And I'm sitting there getting these messages at nighttime. It was Saturday night, and it was horrific. And I think that what we're all experiencing in terms of checking in on our family. I mean, my sister just gave birth in a bomb shelter like a week ago. You know, I think that's a really common experience, and it's something that both people from both sides can relate to. And it's one of the areas that a lot of these random people who are so disassociated from this that are chiming in can't actually feel. And I think it's just a really intense thing. And I know that for myself personally, I can't log on to Facebook anymore without just seeing funeral and Shiva announcements. And I find that to be very hard to go through every day. But I have to check because we don't even know who's missing or who's dead 100% just yet. So like last week, my friend's two twin cousins that were 12 were found, finally identified. Their bodies were burnt to such a crisp that it took that long. So I just think like with a prompt like this, we need to give due respect to the people that we all lost and just take a moment to just validate the fact that so many of us are sitting here having lost family members, friends, people we've met throughout the years, friends of friends, cousins of cousins, aunts. I mean, it's almost impossible to be untouched by this. So yeah, I'm just sorry for everyone's losses, and may everybody's memory be a blessing.
Inshallah, and we apologize for your loss as well. I would like to point out, even though it is very difficult that your sister gave birth at a bomb shelter, there are no bomb shelters for the people of Gaza.
Wait a second. I mean, there is a network of tunnels that the Hamas terrorists hide in, and they don't allow the Palestinian citizens to go into them, apparently. So there are bomb shelters in Gaza, but just not for the citizens.
Yeah, it's tough, man. I don't know about any of that, or you know how those.
I mean, I might be wrong, but I mean that's I can't help but just that pops in my head as soon as I hear him say that.
Yeah, I do want to hear, and this is the thing. It's a difficult thing, right? I watched a lot of like the Piers Morgan interviews of like Israelis and Palestinians, and of course, I think Piers Morgan is very biased in the way that he asks questions, but that's just me. you hear it all over the news media, right? Will you condemn Hamas? Will you condemn Hamas? Will you condemn Hamas? That's always like the first question that these journalists give out. And in a way, I can understand that in that, yeah, you would hope that you would be able to disavow these acts of terrorism that are happening. And the reason a lot of Palestinians don't answer is because, you know, either A, they support Hamas, or B, it's that if I, you know, condemn what's happening on the side of Hamas, it sort of validates what the Israeli government is doing, and that's kind of striking the balance of the two. I wish we could put them not necessarily on equal footing, but say that, you know, there are acts of terror and they show up in many different forms. Can we condemn, you know, can we condemn these things equally or in the same way or in the same respect, if that makes sense? It's just so unfortunate, because you've got to think that while there are Palestinians that do support Hamas, there's got to be so many that don't. And where there are Israelis that are, you know, maybe Zionist or do support what the Israeli government is doing right now, there's so many that don't. And unfortunately, I feel like those are a lot of the people who are losing their lives, the people who don't even support any of what's going on right now. And as I said before, I just can't imagine what that is like, especially from the Israeli girl who said that she was the first to break the news of what was happening at that music festival. Can you imagine hearing just like all these different people coming at you saying there's a terrorist attack happening right now and people are dying left and right to the tune of hundreds of people, and you are the person who has to break that news and have that go out to the media, and it's your friends. I cannot, just can't.
More on the information I get from social media than the news.
I rely more on the information that I get from social media than the news. Okay. I guess my answer is yes to this. And I'll actually use this conflict as an example of why my answer is yes. I think I use news outlets to like either reinforce or disavow the things that I hear through social media. When this in particular was happening from October 7th until now, it was listening to a lot of Israeli people in Israel talking about what they witnessed, what happened, how many lives were lost, doing their own sort of like citizen reporting. And on the same end, I was following people who were on the ground in Gaza. And for one example, I think her name is Bisan, and you've probably seen her too, because she's been all over social media. And honestly, I haven't seen one of her videos in quite some time. I want to say in at least a week, maybe. And it was just hearing what was being reported, because it's very hard. How do we know who's dying, how many numbers, who's responsible for what? We had the whole story of the 40 beheaded babies that went back and forth, and Biden said he saw the pictures, and then they said that he didn't see the pictures, and then there was the bombing of the hospital in Gaza, and the Israeli government originally takes responsibility for the bombing, and then they delete the tweet and say that they didn't bomb the hospital, and then they go and say that it's Hamas rocket is responsible, but Hamas says that Israel is responsible. And you're seeing all these stories. You saw I think she was an Israeli German girl, and her name is escaping me, my goodness. But when the music festival thing had happened, there was videos circulating of a naked woman in the back of a truck being trailed around by Hamas, and clearly she was brutalized, and they're saying it's this girl. Then they say she isn't dead and she's actually in a hospital taken care of, and then they confirm that she is dead. How does anybody in their right mind know what's going on, know which sources to trust, and know who's telling the truth? Especially when you factor in the direct bias that each media source has towards any given end. I don't know how to get through that, and I cannot come to you clearly and say I know definitively that this many people have lost their lives and in this way, or that Israel is responsible for this, and Hamas or is responsible for that. I don't have an answer for you. I have a ton of questions,
Yeah.
but no answers.
Yeah, it's kind of unfortunately incumbent on us as individuals to sort of have a giant dose of skepticism with regard to the things that we see on social media and in the news, and try to distill out the slant and the propaganda in any of the information that we're getting, and to get down to the facts at hand. Like, we know there was an attack on that day. We've seen the footage of it. We know a lot of how it's been reported and facts, specific things within it. Of course, there's varying levels of doubt that you should have on specific things. But anyway, you have to just take the broad brush strokes, but it is difficult. I liken it to, we used to have TV shows that appealed to everybody because you had like 3 channels and they had to make them work for a lot of people. And nowadays, with the proliferation of all these new streaming platforms and all the different options, everything's become very segmented and appeals to specific interests. And I think that's happened to our news as well. You used to have like Walter Cronkite, the most trusted man in news in America. It's like very it was very well vetted, or at least, I'm sure there was still bias then, but it
wasn't super saturated.
Yeah, it wasn't as saturated, and you didn't have as much slant because you didn't have a competitor that you buttressed against. And now, not only do we just have Fox and CNN, we have all these different podcasts. It's just like you can get your information from literally a million sources.
Yeah.
And it's just an unfortunate reality of the modern day that we live in, that we just have to piece together the truth as best we can. And I think that's like a muscle that you exercise. You got to get better at being aware of your own biases, being aware of the biases that are out there, and really try to piece together like the truth and then base your opinions on that.
Yeah, and it's so difficult. Like I said, follow these people who are actually on the ground. And the great thing about social media, but also the horrifying thing about social media, is when these things happen, you have like a primary source, a direct primary source, where people are literally living in it and, filming themselves and showing you what's happening around them. And then you can sort of compare that with what you're seeing in the news. But with the news, it's so difficult because you can read 2 articles, and let's say one's from Fox News and one's from CNN, and they're about the exact same story. And within them are objective facts, like sprinkled throughout. But each news outlet gives its separate characterization, where one refers to, Palestinian militants, the other calls them terrorists, and the same for, what's going on with the Israelis. There's just language that you have to fine tune your radar for in order to be able to see through some of the bullshit that is being published constantly. With that, we'll get back.
Obviously, it's very important that we're using verified news sources. There's so much misinformation, I think, from both sides. I know that I've corrected people on the Palestinian side, hey, I don't think that this is actually true. Maybe, we need a source. If you're reposting something from someone else, also tag whichever, journalist or news site it's coming from, just to streamline information, because misinformation can hurt the cause more than the actual information not being shared, truly. And I think in order to honor what is happening and to be able to truly advocate, it's important that we're only putting forth the truth. There's so many different kinds of networks, ones that are more on the ground, like Al Jazeera and Mayadeen, and then obviously you have the American media, CNN and New York Post and New York, Times and Washington Post. I feel like a lot of times, in general, I feel like American media, mainstream media, has not been fair on so many other issues previous to this. And so I don't only necessarily go to them, but I do look at all sources of media because I want to get a fair view of what's happening. And I also look at Israeli media.
Can I ask a question? Because I saw you both not. In your opinion, is the American media bias anti-Palestinian or anti-Jewish bias, is what you say when you say that the American media is not?
Anti-Palestinian.
That's so interesting, because for the Jews, we think it's so anti-Jewish bias.
Yeah. It can be both, right?
Yeah.
It's one or the other, and it's anti-Palestinian.
It can be both. That's the weird, but also, I guess, kind of good thing about the U.S. is that you can get a ton of different media from different sources. I've definitely seen bias in both directions. I'd have to think about which one I've seen more. We do know that the U.S. is very much pro-Israel on a government level. Like that is something that the U.S. backs Israel, and I have my personal opinions about that. I don't really support that. I don't think we should be sending over billions of dollars, and I feel the same way about what we've done with Ukraine. I don't think that our tax dollars should be spent in this way. So there's bias in that sense. But also, you'll see these pundits on CNN, MSNBC, ABC, which many of them very left-leaning, say, you know, they are pro-Palestinian in this case. So the beautiful and scary thing about America is that you can get news sources from all different angles. So that's a tough thing to decipher. I don't like that he said it can't be both, it's one or the other, because it very much can be both.
Oh, because you said it is.
Yeah.
So.
Well, because like if you look at the wording, there's selective language, there's omission, and there's adding of certain words that paint a narrative very strongly.
Mm-hmm.
So when they say clashes between, Palestinian Israeli forces and Hamas, but you look at what the actual story is and you read the fine print, which most people unfortunately don't do. It turns out that Israeli forces in whatever situation might have stormed into a village and shot a child, but the headline reads clashes. Anytime it's the other way around, terrorist. So. I think it's very important to label people correctly. And some people are terrorists and they should be labeled as such. Mm-hmm. But when you omit certain information for a specific purpose, this is what the Western media specializes in.
What I love about this is literally what you're saying could be taken verbatim from like a Jewish dinner conversation. They do the exact same thing to the Jews. Where
example?
Absolutely. Where like the day after this October 7th massacre, the guys flying in and like raping and burning people are being called militants and not terrorists.
Freedom fighters.
Freedom fighters. There's like literally examples of, for example, if there's a terrorist attack in Israel, the BBC will publish like IDF, shoots Palestinians, as opposed to like the terrorists literally came and tried to stab people and then got neutralized by the IDF. And so I think like the language, honestly, and by the way, I have a lot of Palestinian friends. I know you guys think the media is biased against you, and I know we also think that too. I see this on both of my feeds. It's like so blatant how we both feel this way. And I think that instead of dismissing the fact that like we just don't see that, maybe we need to send each other examples of articles that we feel are completely biased and have really crappy headlines. And the truth is, by the way, most of these media orgs don't even have a personal incentive in the region. They're just stirring this pot for and we're just fighting out over this. We shouldn't let them.
I think many of them have personal incentives. And there's a lot to be said that there are many who benefit greatly over wars, just constantly starting and going. And you look at like the billions of dollars that are moving around, and not just in the example of what's happening in the Middle East, what's happening around the world. Tons of people benefit off of this conflict continuing to happen. And then you have to think of how many of those tons of people have their hands in media, and how much influence they have over media and the way that these stories are portrayed and the way that things are told. I have most definitely seen propaganda in both directions. Ever since what happened on October 7th. I've seen videos of a Palestinian man who is pretending to be harmed in a bombing, and then the next day he's normal in another video. I've seen that happen on the news the other day, and I forget which network was, but it's typically what we would view to be a left-leaning network here in the United States, was covering what was happening and said, right now we're doing hostage negotiations, and each day 10 hostages from Gaza, 10 Israeli hostages, are being given back to Israel. And in exchange for that, we will give them back 10 Palestinian prisoners. And when they were describing the hostages, they were saying, women and children or whatever. And when they described the Palestinian prisoners, they said women and teenage boys. Okay, so what's the difference between children hostages coming from Israel and children prisoners coming from women and children hostages coming from Gaza, and children and women coming from Israel? And what were the crimes of these prisoners? I would love that to be detailed out. This boy who you are now exchanging for an Israeli citizen, Did he stab somebody? Was he a bomber? Was he part of Hamas? Or did he throw a rock at an IDF soldier? Or did he not even do that and he was simply arrested and we're just characterizing Palestinians that are arrested as prisoners? You don't get any clarity on it because, first of all, I don't think the U.S. cares all that much how they cover these stories. We're in a very quick news cycle where they just cover the story and say, well, by the way, they're sending over 10 Israeli hostages and in exchange they'll get 10 prisoners who also happen to be women and children. And you never get to like raise your hand and ask questions and say, well, I want to know, exactly what's happening there and why they're being called prisoners and these are being called hostages. And you never get to figure that out. So the amount of propaganda that I view on a daily basis is astounding to me. And I, for one, don't feel like I have the clarity to see through it all.
Do that, but the BBC is legitimately so anti-Semitic. CNN has taken years before they turned around and called Hamas a terrorist group.
Anti-Semitic?
Their headlines are an absolute atrocity. They never report on anything that happens for the Israeli side. They only report on our response.
But how is that anti-Semitic?
Because they never report on the attacks that come towards us. They only report on what we do. And yes,
That's all I see.
it's
interesting
Okay,
how
I wanna answer
getting
the
like
prompts.
two
I wanna
different
answer the prompts.
we
It's
have
interesting
like
how
we
we
have
feel.
the
I'd like to answer
I would
the
say that we're
channels.
probably looking at things through different lenses.
Yeah. So when you say the news, you see something on social media, you should definitely verify. As far as the U.S. media, and this is just my opinion, the U.S. media that we've been fed has been feeding into lies over the years, not just this conflict, in general. So when you say they don't have let's say, a dog in the race, it's just not true because Joe Biden clearly supports Israel unequivocally. So you can't say that there's no Israeli bias in America. The U.S. always stands with Israel. That's a fact.
I have a problem with Joe Biden, probably like
Yeah.
everybody does.
Okay.
Joe Biden or
it's
not, I don't
just
think that
leadership in
affects
After that,
media
he
coverage.
It does.
$1 billion
It does.
According to you.
No, because the Democrats
Joe
definitely.
Biden repeated the unsubstantiated claim that 40 babies were
Yeah.
beheaded.
Joe Biden say that because he saw what we showed him. If I believe Joe Biden and his support to Israel, I think it's a big BS.
Yeah.
You think
just
Joe
funded
Biden
Iran.
So Joe Biden-
support Israel?
what?
He just funded Iran.
No, I don't think he's
Just
He
The
literally
posturing.
came on.
I
the
think it's a
poster.
political.
America doesn't
thing.
support Israel.
Well, I don't think. Well, America, it's not Joe Biden.
We just wasted $15 billion.
The president of
He
America.
literally
America is not Joe Biden.
Yeah, we're
He's the
getting into
president,
like
but
Back to the news thing, though. The IDF has an extensive history of lying. They lied about killing Shireen Abu Akleh, the journalist who my mom was friends with. I was going to walk up here, but she wasn't my friend. She was my mom's friend. They said that something else happened to her. Independent investigations came to believe a sniper, while she was wearing, in Jenin, I believe it was,
Yeah.
she was wearing a news report jacket. They murdered her. That's just one example.
That's a good
So the news
example.
lies all the time.
That's a good
Because when it-
example of how they didn't label that
When it
correctly.
first came, they didn't
She
label
says
it.
a Palestinian reporter dies. No, she wasn't died. She was killed by a sniper intentionally shot
Also,
between the helmet
Look about
and
what
the
happened.
vest.
Look at the rocket that fell in the parking lot of Al Shifa Hospital.
Yeah.
How that was.
She was
reported.
That was a catastrophe. But no, I agree that they're
She
probably
was shot.
misreporting on both of us.
The same
So-
goes
No, no,
for
no, no.
Rachel
Wait,
Corrie.
Say that one more
That
time.
one.
So, do you remember the whole big thing about the Al Shifa being bombed by Israel? That hundreds of people had died. That the news came out instantly.
You mean Al
That
Ahli?
500
After 2
people-
minutes, after
Was
2
it-
minutes,
oh, sorry,
they said
wrong
500
hospital.
people got
Yeah, Al Ahli.
After 2 minutes, they said 500 people, and this Israel had bombed. Every major news outlet reported this.
That's what happened.
No, it was proven very unequivocally that's not what happened. It was.
Here's another example, guys.
Here we go,
This
yeah.
one rocked me too. Okay, so first of all, when I heard about this hospital, which it's not Al Shifa. He spoke about the wrong one. I don't know how to pronounce the actual hospital that ended up being bombed, where they reported that 500 people had died. But this was huge. It was all over the news. Everybody was talking about it. When I first was acquainted with the story on social media, it was because a member of the Israeli government claimed that Israel was responsible for the bombing of the hospital. So then everybody runs with the story. Israel's responsible for the bombing of this hospital, 500 people dead. And then that tweet gets deleted, and the screenshot exists somewhere. You guys can go and look it up, whatever. The tweet gets deleted. Then the Israeli government comes out and says, no, that wasn't our bomb. In fact, it was a Hamas bomb that was misdirected, and it falls on the hospital. Now 500 people are dead. Then the Palestinians say that's not possible. Hamas does not have rockets big enough to create that sort of damage. There's no way that 500 people died because of a Hamas bomb. And then Israel comes and says, oh, here's some grainy footage of rockets, going through the air. This is the one that hit the hospital. And then we're all just meant to trust that that's what it is. And we're meant to trust them when they come out and say, no, it wasn't us. It was in fact Israel. Who knows? Who knows? Can any of you confidently say that you know? I'm curious why a government official would take claim of the bombing happening first, and that's the only like instinct I have to go off of, because it did happen, you know, almost directly after the bombing occurred. But then everything that ensues after creates so much muddy water that it's hard to figure out. So then you, as a member of the public, are just sitting there so confused that you don't even know what to think anymore. And I do think a lot of people are relying on the fact that they can confuse us in this way so that we don't even know what happens, but we keep fighting and it just keeps going and the conflict remains.
Islamic Jihad rocket failed, went
Al
off, blew up
Jazeera
in the
filmed
park.
So our rockets are that strong.
What's your
No,
source?
it fell. That's why not 500 people didn't die. It would have been a much larger damage if it had been a dropped bomb from an Israeli plane, like they said it was. But it was
500 people died is
But they
not that
didn't.
much damage.
500 people didn't die from that.
But 20,000 overall have.
You know,
That's not what we're talking about.
But I am talking about that. I want to talk about
Where'd you get that number?
the Euro
Said
Mud
10
help
to 50.
from the UN.
That's what the numbers is that were reported once all of the dust settled from all of the other international organizations. To bring it back to news, to see like the way that some news organizations verify or post later or post earlier but spell things wrong or things like that, it's kind of telling to see how quickly misinformation can spread. I will say social media can't just be completely dismissed because it does present sort of a first-hand perspective. However, I prefer to get my first-hand perspective from my friends and my family on the ground, and I think that that's the news that, if anything, I was kind of more hoping to hear from today about, because I feel like that's the personal experiences that we're not actually getting to hear from each other online or on the news. And I think that that's kind of the firsthand news that people should be sharing. You know, me personally, like I get the rocket alarm app on my phone, but I also get a text from like 8 different WhatsApp group chats, you know, when rockets happen, is everybody okay? Is everybody okay? Da-da. So I think that that's also a really important news source, and I would ideally love to be able to share firsthand news like that with people like you and also receive it from you as well.
I do love the perspective that she in particular is coming to this video with of, you know, like, I get it, we're going to continue to be on our separate sides of this conflict, and she seems very, you know, self-aware in that respect, but like, please, and hopefully she's being honest, I would love to hear, you know, what you are listening to. I would love to read the articles that you are looking at. I would love to have this back and forth with the knowledge that we have and the articles that we're reading, so that hopefully we can gain more clarity on what's happening in this situation. And she, with every prompt so far, has managed to just like tie a very neat bow on it and do so in a way that is respectful and humanizing. So shout out to her. I think her name is Shawnee. Shawnee.
I think that that's the most reliable info we can get.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I have a lot of friends who have family directly there, so they do get, you know, photos and videos when there's internet access, you know, but I was sitting with one of my friends one day when he called me hysterical at 7 a.m. and told me his parents had just called him and told him to say his goodbyes to them because the bombs were getting closer to their house. And the fear in his voice really, like, suffocated me. And I didn't know what to do for him, so he came over. We tried calling his family. His parents weren't picking up. I didn't know what to do for him, you know? Like, he's like, my parents are gonna die. I'm in America, and I can't be there for them. And I had never seen or been in a situation where I've had someone so close to me dealing with something like that. I mean, he literally stayed by my side the entire day until we were able to verify that his family was going to be okay and that they finally moved away from their neighborhood. And so they're still safe to this day, but, you know, seeing videos directly from friends, like you said, like on the ground, just has another layer of devastation. Because it makes you realize these are like real people that are connected to the suffering. A lot of times because news agencies can't really be on the ground in certain hot areas like that, it's good to have people that are reliable that you can connect with and get that information from. And it brings an extra layer, I think, of just humanity, because it's not just some like corporation that's, you know, reporting on the news. It's someone real that's like there in the midst of it.
You know, we need that. We need that because a lot of our casualties are not reported on. In fact, this morning, I was in the bathroom on my phone, as we do, and I looked up children killed. I was trying to find a specific child, and there was 4 that came up. 2 of them, sorry, 5 total. 2 of them, again, from like several hours ago, right? And then there was 4 others that died 3 days ago in Jenin, right? A 16-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a 19-year-old, right? And it was so difficult to find. There were 0 Western sources reporting on this. I had to search it in Arabic for their names to come up in the Palestinian casualty roll. And it was almost impossible. I was shocked that there was 4 below 18, one of them 19, minors that died, and I could not find this reporting. I'm like, wait, I'll Google it. Oh, it'll come up. Oh, here. And it just wouldn't come up. It's like, so yeah, we need to have people on the ground, the Mu'taz Azaizas, the others like him that are reporting, because
I do want to like push back on what he's saying just a little bit. It's just like, okay, can we have a little bit of understanding as to maybe why Western sources would not be reporting on every single casualty that takes place? It's because, well, you're not a part of the West, right? And there's a million other things that are happening in the world, tragedies all around the same time. I'm gonna ask you guys this, and I bet you have noticed this. When I was on TikTok 2 weeks ago, was all Israel, Palestine, whatever. Everybody's saying their side. Everybody's yelling at each other. Everybody's telling you, you must use your platform as an influencer to talk about what's happening in Palestine or talk about what's happening in Israel, and everybody's going back and forth. All of a sudden, I'm going on TikTok and it's real quiet. I'm not hearing a damn peep about the conflict right now that's happening in the Middle East. And suddenly it goes from the conflict that's happening into the Middle East. Now every single TikTok influencer is just posting about Congo and like the cobalt mines and everything that's happening there with labor, which, okay, I get it. You care about something and then you move on to the next thing and then you move on to the next thing. It is the nature of the news cycle. But one, do we have a moral obligation to report on every single thing that is happening all over the world? And if the answer is yes, how could you possibly keep up with all that? How can Western media keep up with everything that's happening on the Middle East, mixed in with everything that's happening in the Congo, mixed with everything that's happening in North Korea and in China, and all these different human atrocities that are taking place, and mind you, all at the same time, where people are dying in Gaza and Israel and the West Bank? There are hundreds of countries that are dealing with similar atrocities. So when I hear people sort of have the perspective of, okay, yeah, I have an opinion about what's happening in the Middle East, but I'd much rather we focus on what's happening, here in our own land, I can't help but have a little bit of respect for that opinion, because how much more, can you do? How many different things should you focus on at the same time? And is the Western media responsible for reporting on every single casualty that happens in every single atrocity like this? And if the answer is yes, why is that coverage not even-handed for all the other countries that are experiencing things like this now? And how is it that we pick the conflicts that we are going to be the most invested in as a country? Because right now we've decided it's Ukraine and Israel. We're funneling billions of dollars over to these two countries while people here in the United States suffer. People cannot eat. People are living on the street. There's a ton of different things that are happening here in the US that you don't get a peep in the media. Yet we're arguing over like casualties thousands of miles away that are not being reported on in Western media. And mind you, I feel for the hurt, the pain, everything that these people are talking about, and I would never wish that upon my worst enemy. My worst enemy, I don't wish that upon them. But how many different things can you juggle at the same time? That's the question.
There is a bias against us, and our stories are being hidden. They are being erased.
All I'm trying to get you to see is that it's the same on both sides.
But it can't be the exact same.
I feel
it can't. It's either one side's stories are buried, and the others are highlighted.
I think both sides can be buried. Clearly they are, because I'm not trying to invalidate your experience, but you're trying to invalidate mine. I'm telling you, we've
maybe from different publications.
Exactly. Sure. Let's say it's from different. But the media overall, I'm telling you,
exactly from what we're suffering. It feels to me like we're in a movie, and we are the actors, and we are the puppets, and there is some people out there that are watching the movie and just enjoy and eating their fruits. And there is a lot of people suffering in this. Listen, I'm listening to you. I swear, I want to cry. I swear, no one in this world, and I don't care what size, if it's a Palestinian or Jewish or Ukrainian or Russian, supposed to live under bombs. No freaking way.
Agreed.
And I'm talking to you as a veteran, as someone who was there inside, as someone who volunteered to carry all those, as someone who has friends Muslims. No one, and you know what? All of my friends also in Israel, no one wants to go into Gaza. We are afraid. It's afraid the shit out of us to go into Gaza. We didn't want to as friends.
Yeah.
As kids. I went there when I was 19 years old. We don't want to go there. Absolutely, we don't want to.
But that's sad.
We don't want to. It's super sad, bro.
You get killed
It's
if you
super
go
sad.
there.
What I'm trying to say is that, listen, you're talking about the publications. We are talking.
I wish I'd gotten clarity on what he was saying there. Is he saying that he doesn't want to go to Gaza because he's scared of his life, because of like jihadists and Hamas, or he doesn't want to go to Gaza because of the conditions? I didn't get what he was saying there. The girl next to him says we'd get killed there, but I wanted to hear more about it because it's a very different statement. If he's saying I don't want to go there because of the conditions versus I don't want to go there because I fear for my life.
Talking also about the publication. We have the same f***ing problem. We are suffering from the same shit. And some people out there watching,
And it's like you said, we're puppets.
and we are puppets, and we are playing. We play the game of our game. You play the game of your game,
Yeah.
and we are like there is some clash here, and some people are benefit from this. Now look,
Our governments.
the news outlets or social media. What's the difference? Everyone has an agenda.
We can agree that Al Jazeera definitely has more of a sympathy and a bias towards the Palestinian struggle, just like we can agree Western countries and media outlets have unequivocally always supported Israel.
Maybe
Now it's a little less
Maybe
biased.
some, yes,
Now it's a
maybe
little
not.
less biased.
No,
Yes, they
it's
have.
never like that.
Yes, they have.
Some do, perhaps, but not, you can't say the entire, every
Oh, Western
media
media.
outlet in all of America is
Have
all.
you ever heard?
We're talking about the major ones.
Yeah, go ahead.
CNN, Fox.
Let me say
CNN,
something.
CNN, bro?
CNN
Oh my God.
hates
Oh, because they're being more honest now. That hate.
Look at all the crazy different interpretations you can get of the same news outlet. That's wild.
Oh, they've always hated
Because they're
us.
showing the children dying in Gaza?
No,
So
no,
if there's
that's how we
no-
felt.
That's not
how
what we
Can I
felt.
just
felt.
say
That's how we felt.
Is it a fact that U.S. sends money to Israel?
Yes.
And the media also backs it.
But U.S. also
Government
sends
and
money
media
to
go work
Palestine.
together. Yeah, they do.
They also just released a ton of money to Iran. The U.S. is the biggest pot stirrer in this whole thing. The Jimmy Carter.
Well,
the whole
it's
thing.
just-
I mean, it's like they love to cause trouble in the.
We do love to stir a pot. We do have.
I would say
It's
Are
just
there
like
There are a
you
lot of
said.
our
Yes.
national
Are
assets.
there
It's not just
Zionists?
America.
Literally, we're
there's
puppets. The
Russia,
Israel-Palestine
China.
conflict brought to you by Qatar,
ideology
Iran,
over there.
U.S.,
We're
Russia,
all
everybody that has no actual direct interest and just
Israel.
wants to mess with us. That's the issue.
But and it's like he said, we are sitting here like puppets while all of our governments still play us. But this, however, this is what I do have a problem with, and you can agree, disagree. Every time, and again, with all due respect, right? We're trying to find a middle ground here, but hear me out before we all go rah, okay? For 75 years of illegal occupation, we have been bleeding and we have been suffering. Whether you want to hear it or not, please respect that that's what we're saying. I get it. I understand. If I was sitting on your side, okay, but just have some, I'm asking for compassion. Where is the humanity? And every time we say, well, this Palestinian person was unalived by Israeli forces or this and that, it's no offense. Then on the Israeli side, yeah, but what about us? Okay, 10,000 Palestinians just were unalived and bombed in Gaza. Then the Israelis. What about us? We have been bleeding and crying for 75 years. When is it our turn to mourn?
Let me pause. I have a question for you, Taylor, and probably for the chat too. Do you guys think this will ever be solved? Do you think that with everything going on, with the information that you have, that there is a solution on the horizon?
I'm not optimistic, to be honest. I think it could be, but I think human nature is really at the core of, like, it's the tribalism and it's the irreconcilable differences. And then, to me, throughout every conversation that we have about this, the 900-pound gorilla in the room is Hamas and jihad. And I think as long as that's a factor that can affect the equation, as long as Hamas has enough power to do things like they did on October 7th and to do what they've done as long as they've been in governance, it's it's going to continue because they're puppets of Iran and other jihadi people. So I think that's the biggest limiting factor, is the, like you said before, like the bad actor that ruins it for everybody.
Yeah.
But also it doesn't inspire much hope when people are not able to let when the cooler heads don't prevail and people aren't able to put aside their like a priori religious commitments or a priori like qualms with the other people group and say, okay guys, regardless of how we feel about all this complicated history, like no one's going to get everything that they want here. What is a solution that can end the bloodshed and move us forward? But I don't think that we can get there, and I think it's the human nature.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Like, we're hearing from these seemingly pretty reasonable people right now, but they're not the ones who are responsible for what's going on, right? So where I think many of the people in this Jubilee video are probably going to advocate for something to the tune of a two-state solution where they live together and coexist with one another. What's for the people who refuse to let that lie and refuse to stop resorting to violence? How do you handle that? Don't know, guys. Don't know.
You're right.
In terms of bias of the media, Western media against Palestinians, have you ever heard a Western publication state that Palestine has the right to defend itself? Follow-up question. Do any of you believe that Palestine has a right to defend itself?
The first question is actually really interesting. I haven't. That's actually a really interesting question.
Is that indicative of a bias?
No, because I'd like to answer the second question. I'd like to answer the second. I think that there's a bias against both of us, by the way. I don't disagree.
I'm biased.
No, the news. I think news is biased towards both of us, and I think we're coming to an understanding of that. However, I think the second question is also very interesting because the way that we see it, we are never on the offensive. The way that I get that you guys disagree. Just hear me out, because I think this is where there's a huge misunderstanding. Okay, from Israel's perspective, we've offered peace so many different times. From our perspective, we have diplomatically offered peace so many times, and it's always responded to with war and violence. And so, from our perspective, we would never initiate those wars or violences had they not been initiated towards us. That's why we call ourselves the IDF, Israeli Defense Forces. So for us, that's our perspective. And right now, unequivocally, if there were no terrorist attacks, so much of what is happening just simply would not exist. Everything that's been in place, the blockades, the this, the that, and the other, they all came after as responses. So when we disengaged from Gaza in 2005, we did not have the blockades that existed. We did not have the blockades that existed now. Why did those happen? Because in the following years, right after that, rockets immediately started flying from Gaza. Terror attacks immediately started coming out. So for us, we have done, from our perspective, right? From our perspective, this is how we view it. We are constantly offering diplomatic concessions that are turned down with violence, and often with violence on some of our holiest days. So,
okay, I see what she's saying. I do have one question, and this is just a question for clarity, and you guys can clarify in the chat or in the comments after this video. She says that the Israelis, the Israeli government, Israel is never on the offense. So I'm just... with the timeline, it's really difficult if everybody's coming at it from a different sense of the timeline because, right, you, like I said before, you have the Nakba, which to me, and tell me if I'm getting this wrong, Taylor or somebody in the chat, that sounds offensive to me.
Yeah, I listened to Coleman Hughes. He did a debate with, or not even a debate, Coleman was just kind of interviewing him, but he was a very pro-Palestine activist, and he made that very point. He said, Coleman was broadly understanding things in terms that, what's her name, the lady that was just speaking, he was following Shani, following her line of reasoning, and the Palestinian activist was like, well, the major offensive thing was the creation of the state of Israel. So,
right.
Which is always going to be an argument, but also like that doesn't justify modern day terrorism. So it's like two wrongs don't make it right.
Right. So it's like, okay, so the correct thing it seems to say there would be that Israel was on the offensive at the start of this, which if I'm getting the correct history, would be the Nakba, which means Palestinians were living there. They decided Israel was going to be a state. They moved 750 Palestinians out of their homes, as we talked about at the beginning. 750,000, yes, not 750. 750 you guys, 750,000 Palestinians out of their homes. That marks the beginning of what is the 75-year conflict to come out of that. So to say there was never an offense on behalf of Israel, I guess her logic in that is that other nations told them they could. This was something that they went back and forth on, and then it was agreed the state of Israel was going to be created. So they got the go-ahead for the Nakba.
Yeah, and then there's also the reality that, we can debate whether the Nakba or whether the creation of the state of Israel in that land was justified, but the state does exist, and that state was attacked by Arab nations, and they fought a war, and Israel was on the winning side of that war, of multiple wars. And so in essence, the Palestinian people were kind of caught in the middle of that conflict, but also it's clearly which side they're on, and their side lost.
Right.
So you are a defeated people, essentially,
right.
Which is, I think, often lost in this conversation as well.
Okay. So yeah, that adds a lot. And then from what people are saying, the British essentially said, green light. This is how things are going to go down. This is where the state is going to be created, correct?
The British said that they helped establish, you guys might need to help us in the chat here, but the British helped establish the state of Palestine?
Yeah, that's what I was...
As I understand it, yeah.
Okay. And you, again, correct us in the chat.
It was like a coalition of countries, I think, in the wake of World War II and the Holocaust. It was kind of collectively decided that Britain was occupying that land previously, and then it was decided that land would be given to make a state of Israel that everyone that was suffering from the Holocaust and is dispersed throughout the world could retreat to.
So there's like a lot of different moving factors here. I don't know how you qualify what would be offensive or what would be defensive in that case. But it's interesting that it's not like referenced or talked about. And I think we end the prompt on Shani's words here. So I guess we'll see. I'm assuming it's going to come up.
And we told you, I see some comments like, this is painful to listen to. You guys are getting everything so wrong.
I'm sure.
And then other people are like, yes, exactly. That's the Balfour Declaration. That's what happened. So like you said, we're thinking out loud. We're kind of processing this in real time. So I'm sorry, but thank y'all for bearing with us.
Yes, you guys can deal. This is what we do as human beings. So we figure out what's happening.
So from your perspective, defending yourself, I feel very bad that this is the difference in perception, because I can understand where you're coming from in feeling frustrated that the youth defense is not used in your, for you guys, for your side. And so I can understand how that would be very frustrating. But from our perspective, this is where we're coming from.
Our children should not inherit this conflict.
Agreed. You'd hope not.
I'm glad that everybody stepped forward, because I think it's important that, at the very foundation of what we're doing here today, that we all agree that this isn't a way to live, and we can't keep suffering, more heartbreak and more losses. I always used to say, my parents used to tell me that when they had children, that they had hoped Palestine would be free and we would be able to go back and live a life without any hardship. And, now I have people my age, who have children, my sisters, and, a lot of family members who have kids themselves, and, having to have that conversation and talk about who we are as a people and our history and what we've been through. And, passing on that intergenerational trauma, that continues to be carried, from our great-grandparents all the way down to us, it's heartbreaking, and this isn't a world that we should be allowing something like this to perpetuate. Yeah, it would be great for everybody to be able to go and to live and to, walk the beaches and visit the holy sites and not have to fear for their life while doing it.
This is like, who wants to live like this forever? This is crazy. If I'm going to bring kids into this world, enough is enough. And I don't want to live in a world without the optimism that peace is a possibility. I really don't. I think that that's like a world to live in. I refuse to believe that as a younger generation, as a newer, smarter, more informed generation, that we can't come together and make something tangible actually happen for our kids. And I totally agree.
And I think the only way to do that is for people on both sides to recognize each other, and that
I agree.
We're gonna disagree on whatever, but one side has their story, their truth, their lived experience. The other has the same. We don't have to convince the other to see it the exact same way. We just have to see each other and acknowledge that we're both in this situation and we both want to get out of it, and let's treat each other like human beings and find the way out of it.
Jonah, what's your involvement in this?
What do you mean?
What's your involvement in this conflict that we were speaking about?
I'm a Jew.
Oh.
So,
Can we not?
like, where are you from? Like, where do you live?
I live in Los Angeles.
Where were you born?
Los Angeles.
Okay. It's easy for you to say what you said, and even though I agree with what you said, that we do need to be able to see eye to eye. We do need to be able to find a future for our children. But respectfully, you were born in Los Angeles. You were raised in Los Angeles. One of the best places in the world. I love it, right?
Yeah.
You don't have the answer to this conflict, to this occupation.
Well, okay. Well, if that being your logic, then nobody would ever talk about anything ever that's happening, and you should not rely on the U.S. or the UN or anybody for help or acknowledgement or learning about what's happening. Also, I'm seeing your guys' comments about the Nakba and saying that the Arab-Israeli war predates the Nakba, and of course, I don't think it just came out of nowhere. Like all of a sudden, the Israelis decide, oh, you know what? We want our own. We want our own land, and we're going to go and take this. I was just thinking from more the perspective of maybe an older Palestinian, how they would view what was happening around them, which I did see somebody's comment underneath this Jubilee episode that said they wish there was more generations present in this conversation. All of these people look, I don't know, none of them seem
much over 35 or so.
much over 35. Maybe the woman who talked about her ex-husband is a little older than that. But I would have loved to have heard from at least one or two older Israelis or one or two older Palestinians who actually have, you know, the deeper sense of the history that's happened here, so that they could talk about that and something that they've lived through. Because if you think about it, in how young these people are, they're getting stories that are, you know, passed down to them that they have not experienced, which doesn't negate the opinion that they're having. Much like him being, you know, born and raised in Los Angeles doesn't negate his opinions. But it would have been interesting to hear from more generations there.
That's the people from Jordan.
Okay.
Jonah's thoughts on this conflict are not invalid just because he was born in LA, and I think that's crazy to sort of invalidate.
I said I agree with his sentiment,
so don't
but he's still
disqualify
from
him.
Los Angeles.
But you're still DQing him to a degree by saying he's born in LA.
Respectfully.
I just don't think that that's right. I think that he has a lot of skin in the game, family in Israel. He was just there with
Jewish
me in
getting
April.
attacked
That's
all
wrong.
over. I think actually there is a big room for people that comes from different countries and they feel hurt from some reason, from social media or whatever, and come and say what they think about the situation.
The problem is, there's not going to be, I don't believe that this is going to end as long as Palestinians are oppressed, put into blockades in Gaza, put into all these different things that they don't have freedom. I've gone there, I've lived there for months at a time, 4 different occasions. I went to Jerusalem, my cousin couldn't come with me. These type of things are not going to ensure peace. What's going to, or raiding of Al-Aqsa, or going into Jenin and refugee camp, all these things. So of course,
Check your
of
sources
course, these are, come on, these are valid.
Check your sources, my friend.
Let
Why
him
they're going
finish.
to
Just
Jenin
finish.
because they're
It's besides the
terrorists.
point. It's besides
Yeah,
the point.
but what I'm saying is, what I believe,
And then I'll respond.
It was the
What's your
90s.
source?
Let him finish, please.
Yeah.
IDF.
The IDF's not a valid source.
BBC.
It's a biased source. I think we have disagreements on what we think needs to happen to end. You think, oh well, everybody disarm on the Palestinian side and submit. I think that they're not
Is that
going
what
to.
I said?
Yeah.
Did anybody hear me
He
say
said-
that?
no, not
You
you.
just pointed at me and said
Not
that that's
you.
what I
Who
said.
said that?
He said it.
Who said that?
He said it.
Okay.
What I said.
Well, then I apologize for that. But I think that the solution would be to end the occupation, the Israeli occupation.
I totally hear that, but as I said, there's two sides to every story. So the Israeli side would be, well, they need to stop having terrorist attacks in Israel, and we can stop at this. That's why I'm saying we can go back and forth. A lot of things need to happen from a lot of parties. It's going to require a lot of outside parties having influence from the Arab region and the U.S., bringing people to the table, making things happen. If we're just stuck in the intra-fighting of I'm there, we're hating each other,
That's not what I said.
It's never
either,
going to
though.
get anywhere.
And the occupation is absolutely the problem. So even though you said this is how I think it'll be resolved, it needs to be the other countries and people need to come together. I'm saying that the root of the problem is the oppression. And it's the land theft,
And
the
I
constant
hear that from
settlements.
your side.
Yeah, well, that's most people in the world think that.
But is there objective truth?
I would love to
Is there
actually
objective
respond
Of
to what you're
course, but
saying.
There's also objective
I think-
truth to both sides. That's what I'm
Subjective.
saying.
There is.
Objective truth doesn't have two sides.
Yeah.
There actually,
Objective
I think-
truth is truth.
Yeah,
Is there,
the
that's what
Nakba-
my question was. Is
So,
there objective
I
truth?
Are you married?
I would.
No.
There's objective truth to both sides, I promise you.
That's actually hilarious.
But
I would love to answer you because I actually think that this is a really important.
Respond. Yeah. I didn't ask a question.
Sorry, I would like to respond to you. Apologize for using the word answer. I would love to speak to you just openly because I think what you said is really important. It's something that I've thought of for many years. There's a really good book called Catch 67 by Mika Goodman. Both the right and the left hate it equally, so you know it's pretty decent. And it talks about the idea that we can't look at everything from a non-binary perspective. So we can't look at it as peace or no peace because you're right.
She meant a binary perspective.
Tensions need to be limited. Relations need to grow. We can't just like immediately offer something and then boom, it's accepted. And then boom. We've been trying that for the last however many years and it hasn't worked.
Yeah, but
so I agree.
Yeah, that's true. How many peace? Many. There's been I think 4 or 5 different peace agreements offered on behalf of the Israeli government. And then I think what the Palestinian retort to that is. Well, you took the land in the first place, so why would I negotiate with you to get a segment of the land back when you've taken all of our land?
Sure, but again, every war in history, they ends with a treaty.
Yep.
So the winning
point.
side negotiates with the losing side, and the losing side obviously doesn't get everything they want because they lost. And you laid claim to this land, justifiably or unjustifiably. Again, we can debate that. And then everyone who didn't want you to have that land invaded you, attempted to wrest that land back from your control, and you defeated them. And to this day, you're occupying that land. And so, in that sense, they are on the defensive.
Yeah, at some points, something's gonna have to be accepted, right? Or not. I don't.
It's just
how
reality.
do you?
I don't know.
I feel. Yeah, I feel like that is you can argue from whatever side of the conflict you're on or whatever, and have your strong feelings towards what each side is doing. But at some point, isn't it? We're gonna have to settle it in the conditions that we're in. I don't know how or what you do.
Agree that we do need to minimize we need to improve the day-to-day lives of both Israelis and Palestinians. Travel within the West Bank is a huge issue, and Catch 67 talks about that, and potentially building a road that's Palestinian controlled through all of the cities to be able to improve travel and transport. So there aren't these sort of weird blockades or blockages where you can't bring your friend to somewhere or you can't visit a cousin who's in a different town. There's actually a lot of really awesome orgs that are working on these sort of tangible, actionable items that we can do to improve the situation and the lives on the ground. And if anything, I think in the last 4 or 5 years, what we've seen with the Abraham Accords, bringing peace between so many nations and Israel in the Arab countries, to me, as a Moroccan Jew, I almost cried at the thought of peace between my countries. It's reconciling my two identities. Excuse me, let me please finish. Reconciling my two identities to me was so special. And so that to me was one of the things that we've done, bringing in, many people from Gaza with work visas into Israel to be able to work in Israel.
Out of Gaza
having
in
a number.
2005.
Yeah, but I'm talking since then. I'm talking since then, the last 4 years. And if you've noticed in the last 11 months in Israel, we've had a number of protests to be able to also further improve the situations. We are working towards that. I think it's one of the most important things is for us to not look at it as a non-binary thing. Progressives are so quick to look at sexuality and gender non-binary, but when it comes to these sort of complex issues, everything is black or white. It's peace or no peace. That's never going to happen. We need to come together and work on tangible things we can do to improve the situation. So you're right. I actually really agree with you, and I wish that you could hear my agreeance.
So all I was going to reply to was the Abraham Accords. The Palestinians were not even involved in that. So no, we don't accept the Abraham Accords because we weren't even confronted about it. That's what I think most people you ask on the Palestinian side would say.
I think one thing I'm noticing in this conversation is just people are just waiting for the one thing that you say wrong so that they can jump on and be like, oh no, that's actually incorrect, or no, that's actually a misdirection, or you're actually saying the wrong thing. What about the part where she said we'd like a Palestinian controlled road to run through all of the major cities so that Palestinians, people in Gaza and in the West Bank can come and visit all the major cities? Is that something that maybe we could get behind or talk about, or at least start as a first step to maybe building something here? And because what I don't fathom happening is that all of a sudden there's this 2-state solution, everybody's chilling and everybody's coexisting. I feel like it's going to be a step-by-step process. We give way a little bit here, we give way a little bit there, and then it grows.
Yeah, I'm getting from her, in a word, earnestness. She seems like, hey, here's my actual thoughts on the situation. I'm trying to figure this out, and here's where I think this is a solution that could work for everybody. She's trying to make it work. Obviously, she has her own interests. She's willing to say, these are my biases, whatever. But here's how I'm thinking. Maybe we can make a solution like this. And you have earnestness on one side, and I feel like she's being met with a lot of obstinance on the other side. And unfortunately, I do think that's kind of historically held true when the negotiating table has been come to over the decades. And not to say that Israel's always perfectly earnest and acting in 100% good faith every single time, but they have been willing to make concessions time and time again. And that hasn't always been met with much but obstinance.
Yeah, and mind you, she could have been wrong in invoking the Abraham Accords if Palestinians weren't involved. Maybe it's not the proper group to make the argument for, but I just want to try to, through all the other stuff that's getting negated and argued about, piece together what could be some actionable things or like some maybe good bits of wisdom that we could glean from this. We're not going to be able to finish this entire episode. No. We've got about like 7 more minutes before we get into super chats. So we're going to try to get through as much of this next prompt as possible. You guys can let me know in the comments down below if you want a part 2 of this, because there are, it seems 3 more prompts in this episode. This is a very long episode. It's an hour and a half. So we're most definitely not getting through it today.
And this is a history that goes back a century of this. Palestinians being excluded. When the Nakba first started, 1 million Palestinians, nearly 1 million, 750 plus Palestinians were expelled from their homes. Some fled, others were murdered, right? And then you have the 1947 partition plan, which is like, hey, we just got here, we're taking 55%, you guys should keep it 45. You're saying we've offered many resolutions. Who would do that? If somebody came to America right now and took our country and said, hey, you guys get 45%, nobody would accept that. So you gotta also look at it from that perspective. So
see, I figured that would be the argument that is made there, but like, I don't know, guys. Like, I'm trying to put myself in their position and think about like how would America handle that if an outside group that is, you know, agreed upon by other nations comes in and says, okay, we got to displace 750,000 of you. Okay, and we do that displacement by some go willingly, others go by force, and then they go, okay, well, now let's negotiate. Now that the land is here, 55-45. How would people take that? I don't know. I think a conflict would ensue, probably much like what we're seeing here. I think this is also reinforced by very religious views, which we know are not going anywhere. These religions have been around for a very, very, very long time, and that's not going to shift or change. If anything, I think it's going to get more and more reinforced as time goes on. So you mix that into the equation, and I just don't know what happens here. It would take a lot of swallowing of the historical past on behalf of the Israelis and the Palestinians to go, okay, yeah, let's get to the table and work out some sort of system where this land is split.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
But to answer your question, I mean, yes, I believe the Americans would wage war on a people that came and tried to occupy their land. Yeah. As the Palestinian, or as the Arab world and the Palestinians did.
Have done. Yeah.
And then lost. Right. So I can't help but keep returning to that point. It's like, you don't get what you want when you lost, and now you don't. Yeah. You're not like a state that has a military that is like on equal footing to be able to assert yourself at a negotiation table. Everything is at the good graces of Israel, which is, again, not a fair position to be in. But I mean, it's just it's a reality on the ground, and that's a reality that's borne out by history.
Yeah, and then I'm like thinking, okay, so at the beginning you spoke about like the natives. So we come over to the United States, or what would become the United States, and of course there's a lot of different tribes that are living on the land, and then war ensues, and we have all these different conflicts that play out, and in the end, what happened? The United States of America is here, and we are here because of what was done by the colonists. So, okay, so how do we view the natives in this case? And if there was some sort of similar response from the natives, which did happen at the time but is no longer happening anymore, what would the response be on behalf of the United States? We would fight back, most definitely. But what did we do? For the natives in the United States, we had all these different reparative measures, and we set up reservations, and they have special funding, and to this day, Native Americans in the U.S. get special funding and
rights to make casinos.
Yes. Now you can look at their land and say, didn't really work out that well. The rates of domestic violence are through the roof. The rates of alcoholism are through the roof. The rates of suicide are through the roof. The rates of drug use are absolutely through the roof in native reservations. So did we do the right thing, the wrong thing? Has anything worked? Is there in fact, a peaceful way to go about these things? I think in whatever way you slice it, there's a lot of human suffering, and we're just living through the middle of it and watching it as it's happening. Yeah.
So, I have kids. When we were in Tel Aviv, and on October 7th, I was in Tel Aviv, and then we drove down to Jerusalem. We heard the alarm goes off. I'm like, do you hear that? Do you hear that? I'm like, and my son goes, yeah, what's that? I'm like, that's the alarm. And then I'm like, my kids doesn't even know what is it. So, to the point, I'm happy my kid didn't know what is it, because I know what is it. I grew up into this conflict. In my house, we don't talk about that. We don't talk what's, like my son, we started to tell them about the story, about the war. There is terrorist, and then my son was like, Dad, in Hebrew, what's terrorist? My kids doesn't know anything about this because for me, they're not supposed to know about that. My question is, why the kids in Gaza are learning books of Hitler's? Books of Hitler. You see books of Hitler all over the schools, all over Shifa, all over the schools. They're all over all those books.
That goes both ways.
Let me answer.
There is no even one program in any school in Israel that teach you to hate Arabs. Not even one book, not even one story in school curriculum.
Very likely that was planted. That's very likely that was planted. But are you done?
Planted, come on, by soldiers like me at 20 years old.
Also,
soldiers planted those things.
But Mr. Mishkila, can I answer your question with another question?
It's
If you have more to say, go ahead.
No, it's because every time we will say something, it's been planted. You guys are lying. Listen, I was a soldier, 20 years old. You know, when you go into Gaza, by the way, when you're 20, until you get into the house, you want to kill yourself. You don't want to be there. You don't want to beat her.
Shouldn't be
As
forced.
a soldier, you don't want to beat her. So there is no soldiers who planting books to take a photo.
It's not the soldier, it's the leadership.
Also, by Human Watch organization, there was an investigation that in Israeli schools inside of Israel, not all of them, but some of them, that they were taught to hate Palestinians.
Oh, no.
Okay, guys.
Round and round we go.
I think I'm just gonna have to pause for today. We're gonna have to get into super chats. I gained no clarity from this episode, but I did hear a lot of people's personal experiences, and I think that helps. As I said at the top of this episode, it does help humanize people, but it seems like it's always just going to be a back and forth of, this is the way we interpreted this is the way I interpreted this is the evidence that I have, this is the evidence that I have, anecdote, your information is biased, and not hopeful. I'm not hopeful about what happens here. I'm curious to hear from you guys. So let's get into your super chats. I'm sure they will be very enlightening.
Oh, wait a minute. I don't have a little bubble for this shot.
Oh, no.
So I might just be, I guess you can switch back and forth while I'm reading?
Sure.
Okay, we can do that. Okay, see, we're figuring out live, guys.
We are.
Wesley Walker was our first super chat today, but he doesn't have a message. So thank you, Wesley. Taylor Fan Club, my favorite super chatter, says, couldn't post last episode because I accidentally used the wrong account number paying my student debt. Instead of coming out of my savings, $4,500 came out of my checking. Overdraft protection put me in the negative for 2 days.
$4,500 to what?
Were you you weren't trying to super chat us $4,500?
I would hope
That would have been one for the century.
Yes.
But if you're still paying your student debt, I don't want your $4,500. You need to put it
don't
toward
super
other
chat
things.
us.
Yeah.
Put it towards
You
your
got to switch back to you when you're talking because people don't want to look at my face.
Don't super chat us. Put it towards your debt, buddy.
Chicken Pork Adobo says, I was pro-Palestine until I researched your videos are underrated. I hope it'll soon get bigger. Love you, Amala. Greetings from Dan Unda.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm glad that you are here. Yeah, I bet there's so many people. I've been watching the comments, of course, that whole episode. There's so many of you coming from so many different perspectives of, you stood here, then you looked something up and it changed you to here, or you stood there and you looked something up and you changed it there. I've heard so many differing takes from people that I would watch for their commentary before anything that happened on October 7th. You guys know, most notably, there's been conflict between Ben Shapiro and Candace, and then Hassan Piker goes on Piers Morgan to state his beliefs. Andrew Tate, I watched his interview with Piers Morgan, pro-Palestinian. So very interesting to like see where all the different dots are on this conflict. And what I have noticed is, while there are some general through lines, like you can guess for the most part that conservative news is going to be pro-Israel and leftist news is going to be pro-Palestinian, there's been many that have shocked me, which goes to show to me that like there's a lot of different ways to interpret all the things that we're seeing now.
100%. Let's see. Natalie Ornelas says, finally caught alive. I'm currently driving from Texas to California to see my family for Christmas. Thanks for helping me stay awake on this long drive.
We're trying.
Are you super chatting and driving? Is that legal?
Oh, yes, hopefully you're doing that at a red light.
Yeah. Thank you for watching, Natalie. Kristen Stewart says, hey guys, you're always wondering what it is we're doing while I'm watching. I'm currently waiting for my dog to give birth.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's a big one. That's going to be a ton of puppies running around.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's an interesting experience.
Yes, congratulations to you and your puppies.
Congrats.
Anisha says, for once, I feel like I don't have the right to an opinion. I never lost anyone to war. Just feel heartbroken for all the innocents that suffer.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to like have to decipher and like look through these things, because it's like, okay, this doesn't really directly affect me, but also there's ways in which the web just constantly grows outward. Like our country is really invested in this conflict in particular, and then so many things are happening on like behalf of us and our media and our tax dollars. So it's interesting to think about like where your opinion is most necessary. I always tell you guys when we talk about stuff like this, please do not base your opinion off of like, I wonder where Amala stands on this thing. I do not want to bear the responsibility of you deciding how you feel about this based on my interpretation of things, because like you, and probably like many of you, I'm constantly taking in new information and just interpreting it in real time for you guys and telling you what my thoughts are.
Which is, as you can obviously tell, what we were doing on the show today. So. Liam Menezes says, I recommend the works of Norman Finkelstein. He's been an excellent source on the pro-Palestinian side.
I've heard a lot from him, and I believe he did, was it Candace? I think
yeah,
recently?
She had a whole episode with him.
Yeah, and then who else have I listened to that's kind of in that same vein? Gabor Mate, who is a Holocaust survivor. He was in the Holocaust as a baby and talks about Gaza, the conditions, having been there, having experienced both as a Jewish person, and his talks about it are very enlightening, and I like his energy because he comes at it just like, here's what I've seen, here's what I know, and there's no anger or like these just like random like musings that come through. He just tells you what he thinks.
Well, Justin Ware says, I just want to ask you and Taylor about how you feel about celebrities being outspoken about a ceasefire. Is it helping, hurting, or should they just stay in their own lane? All my best to both.
I mean, I don't mind if you're a celebrity and you're like, I feel passionate about this, I'm going to post like how I feel. You have every right to do that as an individual, and that's fine. I don't necessarily enjoy the weight that their opinions have on society, but that's just a product of our brains rotting. I think that we put so much emphasis on the words of celebrities rather than other people who may have just a bit more to provide. But I don't fault them for saying how they feel. And if you do feel passionate about it, then go for it, do so. And personally, I would love nothing more than if this all stopped and people just stopped dying. But alas.
Johanna Citra says, hi, Amla and Taylor. Love the works you're doing and has made me rethink a few things. This is my first time watching you guys live. Best of luck from Indonesia.
What an interesting one to get on your first time watching us live.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed it. AVJR says, have you guys heard about Orphaned Land? They're an Israeli metal band, and they have Arabic fans who love them. I'm a fan too. Check them out. No, I've never heard of that. I don't really listen to a lot of metal music, to be fair, though, so there's a reason why I've never heard of that band.
No, every once in a while, my brother shares me a workout playlist that has some metal on it, and I'll play it during a workout. But I don't think I got any orphaned land.
I do rap music for workouts.
Yeah.
That's me. I go hardcore rap.
I'm either like listening to, I don't know, like theological debates or like lo-fi or metal or I don't know. It depends on the day and the mood. Okay, Dean Hunt says, guys, this is a very tough subject to cover, and I think you're doing it with sensitivity, awareness, and grace.
Y'all, we're trying. I'm telling y'all, we don't know all that much about everything that's going on. But I think it's like important that when you are in the space of admittedly like not knowing everything, because how could you possibly know everything, that you do take the journey of like trying to learn things in real time in front of people. So you show that it's like, it's an okay thing to do. Like, we are by no means like a news source or people who are trying to tell you how to think or what the objective facts are of any by any means. We're just regular people who are taking in some of the same videos as you are, same news sources as you are. So I think it's important to do that in front of people so people can see that it's okay. And I'm sure there's been a lot of crazy comments in the chat. I've seen so many of you saying the live chat is out of hand today. I can't be in the live chat. I'm turning the live chat off. Y'all chill out. Chill out. The interesting thing is we are all watching a podcast right now from probably very cushy conditions in comparison to everything that's happening right now. So if that alone doesn't make you like chill for a moment and not be so heated and like passionate and crazy in the chat, I don't know what will.
And on the topic of the chat, the next super chatter, Brutus Rogue, says, Taylor, there's a worrying amount of ignorant anti-Semites and Islamophobes in this live chat. Both sides need to shush and listen. Break out the ban hammer.
So at least it's both of y'all. Both of y'all are in the chat acting reckless, okay?
But you know, honestly, I was thinking I would have to ban a bunch of people for like spamming the flag of whatever side they support and, you know, just free this, free that. And for the most part, I mean, I definitely saw a fair share of them, but nobody was like spamming and being crazy. And I didn't have to ban. Maybe I don't get to read every chat message while we're live, guys. It's impossible to pay attention to everything at once. But overall, I thought we did okay in the chat. So I'm sorry for those who overstepped.
Thank you, guys.
RP Awareness Month says, hey there, gang. Amala, the old Israeli guy, was on with Lila Rose, and he said he doesn't want to go into Gaza because of all the secret death traps set up.
Okay, there you go. So that gives clarity on the point where he said we don't want to go there. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I can imagine that given the current state of things, I don't think many people want to be crossing over into the other territory. I sure as hell would not want to be anywhere near any of that.
No thanks. Judah Onismus says, hi, Amla and Taylor. Check out David Wood and Apostate Prophet. They've had many streams since the war started with an anti-Hamas bent, but very informative.
Hey, that sounds good.
Hey, we're getting sources on both sides.
Love that.
That represents to me that we have a healthy-minded audience because you have some people recommending pro-Palestine sources, some pro- or anti-Hamas sources. So healthy balance. Lets me know we're somewhere in the middle.
Thanks, guys.
Let's see. Manny Petty says, oh, that's funny. Mannypetty. Manny Petty. This is the first live I've caught. I'm a housekeeper and I work until 4, so I was late, but I love you guys. I'm a 21-year-old woman and just started involving myself in politics, so this has been helpful.
Oh, thank you so much. Love you too. Thanks for watching.
I'm glad you think so today, because we were kind of out over our skis in some ways, but like I said, we're chilling.
Don't let the chat skew your guys' opinion, guys. We are learning as we go, as everybody does. So don't get all nasty in the chat saying all these different things to me, because I'm not buying it.
We got thick skin. One more from RP says, so you guys mentioned how people in the chat were saying this is boring, etc. This is the painstaking work that must be done to get closer to the truth.
Yeah, I think so. You gotta like hear things out and listen to it, you know, as they pop up and see if you can find anything in it. I'm not sure what we found so far today, but at least I learned, you know, a ton of different people's perspectives, and again heard from people who are directly affected.
facing people. And shout out to Alex for the wholesome message. You didn't send any 304s to the streets or anything like that. Just gave us a constructive super chat. Great super chat. Shirley Jones says, have you seen the coverage of the higher ups of Hamas saying that they are not responsible for the people in Gaza and the UN is responsible for them? Thoughts?
I've not seen that, but also it's like ridiculous. And then again, you hear so many conflicting reports about like the history of Hamas and how that works. And people say they were elected in 2006, and then the Palestinians say, well, no, the Israeli government is what brought about the election of Hamas, or they like rigged the election for Hamas. I don't know. But also, you would think that if you are the governing body of an area and of a group of people, that you would want to take responsibility. Which is why when people bring up like the human shields and stuff like that, it's just like, ugh. What a disgusting thing to be doing, and what a disgusting thing to subject people to.
Yeah. Cuba's Automotive said, yes, we need a part 2, but also come more armed with info not acquired by news or wiki. Quite a few facts were wrong this time. Anti-Hamas. Love you guys.
Well, yeah, we don't necessarily like Hamas either, but let us know.
Still love us.
Let us know. You can fact check us in the comments down below, as always. You know, I encourage that, and I think we made that clear throughout the video. So let us know what's wrong or what we misstated.
And some of you guys added some tidbits throughout, and we read them. Oh, one of them, I forgot to say, someone said that in the hostage exchange, it wasn't 1 for 1. It was 3 Palestinian prisoners for every
3 for every
hostage.
10. Gotcha.
But yeah, appreciate y'all participating in the discussion as we're learning. Let's see. Aporencesis says, this whole situation makes me wonder if there was a similar debate for Liberia and how Black Americans treated Native Africans during its early years.
Yeah, I wonder, I think there's not a country in the world that you couldn't go back historically and find something similar happening. And it's interesting to view them through the lens of history, and then, you know, be in this current age where, you know, similar things are happening. And you wonder how it's going to be viewed as we get further removed from what's happening now.
Yeah, that echoes to your point earlier about how there's, in the same way that there's so much going on in the world right now that it's like you can't possibly pay attention and give everything justice.
You can't.
Similarly, in history, it's impossible to do that as well.
Yep.
But that's also not an excuse not to know history and you know, look at it and have a clear-eyed view of things. But alas. Celtic Blacksmith says, does anyone else feel that this topic drains them almost on a spiritual level? It's so ugly, so radioactive, it just sucks the life out of me.
Yep, 100%. I cannot like go on social media when this is all over the place. It's just so draining. And I can't even imagine what it is for people who, you know, live in Israel or in Gaza. It's just crazy.
Yeah, it's a good point. Dewan Menzies says, why is it illegal for them to take a DNA test to prove if they are Israelites?
I don't know what that means. I don't know about that.
Either.
I don't know about being legal. I don't know anything about that.
I know, like, if you're Jewish and you move to Israel, you get citizenship on that basis, right?
Right, birthright.
Or like there's a path. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So do they have to like verify that, or is it illegal to make them verify that through DNA or something? I don't know, guys. This is yet another example of things that we're not educated enough about.
No.
But let us know in the chat. Dewan again says that the Bible proves that there will be a group of people that would lie and steal the identity of the true Jews. Okay, I don't know what we're talking about here.
You're gonna get a lot of different opinions in the super chats today.
Yeah. RP, one more, says, let's see how he does. Let's not forget that Israel has a superior army and is also allied with the U.S. And all of Gaza, Palestinians, Hamas haven't been erased, flattened, or destroyed. By the way, Hamas/Palestinian people study Hitler.
Yeah, I don't. Again, it's like I've certainly seen videos of kids echoing similar sentiments to that of Hitler and some supremacists. Now, again, in this age of like propaganda and things being thrown around, who's to validate those videos? I'm going to assume that the source is correct in characterizing it as Palestinian children echoing these things. And when I hear about that, it's just so deeply unfortunate. Like, to hear that children's minds are being indoctrinated in this way, it's just so, it's disgusting, quite frankly. And it's so sad. A child deserves innocence and protection and care, and to not see that happening in several different respects is just saddening.
Yes, indeed. Cupid says, "Hi, Amala, Taylor. Hope you both are well. Finally got to watch you live again. I adore both of you, and your videos make my job go by faster. I own a cleaning business."
Oh, so we had two cleaners in the super chats today, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm glad that we're making your work go faster.
Yeah, always a pleasure to hear what you're up to.
Indeed.
Athelstan Mercia. Oh, that's funny. I've been watching The Last Kingdom, and it's all about. That's like the name of one of the kings and the kingdoms of the ancient UK.
Very cool.
Anyways, nobody puts Taylor in the corner. That's what movie was that in reference to? Dirty Dancing, I think.
Dirty
they
Dancing,
said,
yeah.
Which I have not seen.
Dirty Dancing. And Taylor is indeed in the corner. Sorry, Taylor.
Someone said I look like I'm in the closet of like a high school talent show.
He kind of is. He's right next to my closet.
But literally, yeah. If y'all could see this whole setup,
Yeah.
It looks better on
Janky.
camera, especially on the Amala shot.
It does.
Let's see. One more from Dewan Menzies. "I found it sad that when we have a conversation about reparations for African descendants of slaves, most people don't support it. But we give billions of dollars in tax money to support a genocide."
Ooh, okay. So again, another opinion there. So here's the thing. The reason when I talk about reparations, I think reparations would have been a conversation that should have been had, and it was had through the lens of 40 Acres and a Mule at, the ending of slavery and the emancipation. Why wasn't it achieved right then and there? And that's when it should have been achieved, because now we're nearly 200 years removed, and you have people who never were slaves. We can't gauge the effect of slavery on them and on their families who are asking for reparations. And to me, that doesn't really make sense. Like I said, we went through reparative measures with Native Americans, which I can criticize all day long how the U.S. may have handled that or whether or not it was done properly, and we can look at the outcomes and see that the outcomes are not great. But reparations were also given to Jewish people after the Holocaust. Now, I don't know how effective that was. You guys can let me know in the chat if you're super familiar with the history of reparations there. We gave reparations to, I believe, the Japanese after the internment camps here in the United States. So, again, how effective was that? Did it really, put a Band-Aid on a large wound? Maybe. I don't know. So these are things to discuss, but they have to happen when the things happen. Like, you need to be swift with that.
Another one from RP says, you can split the tension with a knife, so here's a little levity. Does anyone know if Shawnee speaks Spanish? I'll use Taylor's Daddy Yankee pickup line and see if it works. Please do a part 2.
Oh, no, not y'all being hot for Shawnee. She was very pretty. She was very pretty.
And smart.
I get it. And smart. I get it.
Yeah, she was my favorite person in this. She was the most reasonable and
Yeah, she's pretty level-headed.
Lorraine Grubbs says, as Taylor mentioned, they didn't address the elephant in the room, Hamas. This conflict is a result of Hamas, not the Palestinians. Look up Sophia Khalifa for her story as an Israeli Arab Muslim.
I will have to look that up. I do love those individuals who have like an intersection of the different identities, because it's not more likely, but you'd think you would get a more balanced response and perspective as they've experienced both identities.
The Taylor fan club again says, "Lol, no, I was trying to put a large payment toward my student debt, finish it off entirely, only $1,000 left to go. P.S. I wish more people were like you two. I hate when people blindly choose sides."
Yeah, we can't do that here, especially with something that carries a lot of weight. It really does. It's a lot. It's hard. If I don't have clarity on something, I'm not gonna come out and tell you guys something.
Except about pineapple on pizza.
Right, no pineapple.
I literally had pineapple on pizza today.
Oh, yes, you did. I didn't even notice.
I went to a little pizza place. Celtic Blacksmith says, I'm with RP Awareness. I just want a fine Latina to yell at me in Spanish. RP, am I right, my guy? Giggity.
Oh
what is happening today?
I love that you guys love the Latin community. Good for you. Hopefully you find that for yourself, I guess.
Love that for you.
Love that for you.
Amo eso por ti. Christian Meyer says, Christian/Muslim/Jews coexisted peacefully in the region for centuries. Sad what Western intervention did. Love the lives, by the way. You're both very chill.
Yeah, it is sad to see what's going on now, but I feel like it's just now, if it wasn't there, it'd be somewhere else. I feel like it's just like what humans do, and it's like for all of human history, there's been conflict and war and devastation, and does that ever end? I don't know.
Unlikely.
Unlikely.
American Maid says, I never get to catch a live in its entirety, but always watch after work. Been a fan since Amala was appearing on the Ingram angle. Love your tattoos. You guys are both great.
Hey, from the Ingram angle. I used to go on there a lot. I don't go on there so much anymore. I actually did take a step back during all of this stuff and everything that happened after October 7th, because we know like where Fox News stands on the issue. And it's not that, you know, I just feel like I'm not the person to be on there to say things. And sometimes for like their hits, they'll just like plug people into stories. And as the stories were like all Israeli Palestine, I was like, you know what? I'm going to take a step back. I'm not the best person to speak on this. You should defer to somebody else.
Which is why we're all Amla fans.
Yeah, I could have taken that Fox spot, y'all. But I'm not going to do it.
But you're a grifter and a clout chaser.
Right.
Yes, we know.
See, y'all, everybody calls me a grifter or whatever. All these left-leaning publications or whatever call me a grifter. They have no idea. I will step away from stories and I do not toe the line if I don't feel like I have something to add or something significant to say, or if I don't agree. So take that, Salon Magazine.
Rock, Paper, Scissors says, shout out to Taylor in the producer's corner. I walk, laughing emoji. I work at a university, eek, and love when I catch you live.
Oh.
Hopefully not Harvard University.
Hopefully not Harvard. Lots of conflicts these days.
Ryan Griego says, I support pressuring both sides for peace, but not arguments against Israel's existence. It would not be reasonable to abolish the USA, displace 330 million Americans, to return all the land to the natives.
Yeah, I mean, none of it, like, it's not, yeah, the second part of what you said is definitely not reasonable. And also, like, with everything, how it's going right now, how could you do that? Like, how does any of this happen without significant loss of life?
This is a $2 super chat, which we normally don't read, but it's funny. Jeff Rude Boy says, hey, I like your shows and love your hairstyle.
Thank you. You guys like the puff? That's the only hairstyle I wear when my hair is natural, really. It's just a puff. Thanks, guys.
And this is our friend. This is a weird one to end on, but our friend Dewan Menzies substantiating his prior statement on fake Jews, I guess.
What is that?
Is quoting Revelation 3:9. Behold, I will make of them synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews but are not, but do not lie, but do lie. Behold, I will make them come and worship before thy feet. And I mean, so
I don't
there you
know
go.
any of that. Wow. See, this is I come from this at a very non-religious perspective. So the center point of religion in this is just so deeply concerning to me as somebody who's non-religious, because it just shows like I don't know how this ends or how this like is stopped when it's such like a deeply set belief to have it founded in your religion for, you know, Palestinians that are anti-Hamas, for, you know, pro-Hamas people and jihadists, for, you know, Zionists, and that's tough. Like when your religion is so central to you and to your belief system, it's really hard to grapple with.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm coming at this from I guess I am a Christian, so I have that baked into my worldview. But also, I think it's important to like not necessarily dispense with your entire belief system, but be able to delineate between like talking about world affairs as a citizen of the country I live in, as a citizen of the world, and like where you want things to be. Like, and if you're wanting to persuade other people who don't share your religious persuasion, then you need to find common ground with them and cite authority that they will respond to and respect as well, if you're going to have a pluralistic world that works. And so, you know, I try not to approach these conversations like from grounding anything in religious sensibilities, because it's just not everyone's going to respect that. And that's what entrenches us further in these types of conflicts.
Right.
So, and I think, we got one more at the buzzer.
There's a few more.
3 more. Okay, well, if I'm missing any, let me know. But RP Awareness says, you know, Amala, I really do commend you for not speaking on something you don't know enough about. More people need to acquire this trait.
Yeah, like I'm totally fine to do what we're doing on the show today and like watch through videos and tell you how you feel and think about things or whatever, but I'm not gonna go on like Fox News and be like, here's my take on the situation that's happening right now. I'm like, dude, I don't know. First of all, nobody was talking about this before, or at least nobody, you know, who is like super loud right now was talking about this before October 7th. Of course, you have all the people that you've recommended in the chat to go through for like expertise and those who have lived in Israel or lived in Gaza. I'm like, can we defer to those people? Like, why? Who in their right mind would think oh, well, I want to talk about what's happening in Israel and Palestine right now. Let's get Amala on the show. Like, are you nuts? Are you crazy? Absolutely not. You should not go to me for that, especially on something like Fox News. Like that. Like sometimes I get like so black-pilled about the news, and it's because of my own involvement. And that's not to like denigrate my opinions or where I stand on things, because I'm totally happy to go on like Fox or CNN or ABC or MSNBC if you want to like do an opinion piece on like race or gender or feminism and like talk about it from a like, here is me sharing my perspective. But the fact that there's like a Middle East conflict happening right now, and they're like, hey girl, can you come on the show tonight? I'm like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I will not do that. Anyways, sorry. I just had to go on that like tangent, which is crazy. Cause like, Taylor and I, like sometimes we'll have, like a Fox News, cause they used to do them every Thursday. We'll have a hit coming up or whatever, and we'll put together stories and pitch it to them. So sometimes like the stories that you see that I comment on Fox are ones that we've compiled and pitched to them. So just bear that in mind when you're watching news of like, you might think that this is like my news organization knows everything and they do everything correctly and they're going through all these different, like a hierarchy of steps in order to confirm the information that they're giving to me or whatever. If I was a worse person, or if I wanted to lie to you or like spin a story or, pitch them a story that is not really as big as it actually is or is in no way beneficial to you, you could know somebody who has the power to do that. So just bear in mind when you're looking at news sources, which is why you need to look all over the place and read a bunch of different stuff. Because if I was a nefarious person who's trying to influence you, me, 23-year-old Amala, could do that. Just so you know.
So Amala's over here exposing the man behind the curtain.
And it's not to like be, like say anything bad or anything like that. Right. It's just to show you guys that like sometimes these processes are way more fickle than we would expect them to be. And once you do get like to see the process and everything, you go, oh my gosh, like these are just like, this is a few people in a room and writers and stuff, and they're putting together what you watch on the news and just inherently believe is true because you're seeing it with your own two eyes. Okay? And that's where we'll close out the show for today.
I'll rapid fire these last couple super chats. Your Aunt Rachel says, I've been following y'all for a while, but this is my first as a live. As a college student, being honest, hearing this on my campus can get so frustrating.
Yeah, I bet. I think it's hard to be a college student right now with the opinion you're supposed to have versus like all the different like protests that are happening and like the general environment of suffocated conversations where you feel like you can't really say what you're thinking or what you're feeling, or that like we can't acknowledge that our opinions can change. Some of the opinions that I expressed in this video or during this Jubilee Middle Ground very well could change, and rapidly so, as more information comes out and as things progress and you hear more and you learn more and you get a broader look at history. And the fact that we don't accept that anymore and we hold people to the very first opinion that they have or the very first thing that they say, or whatever issue as it pops up, is just really sad. There's one more.
Couple more. Yeah. Taylor's Fan Club says, forgot to mention this from the last show. Amala, really love the new tattoo. Maybe one day I can get my Adventure Time tattoo redone.
Oh, very cool. Thank you so much. I'm glad that you like the new tattoo.
RP Awareness says, Amala, I really, really commend you for not speaking on something you don't. Oh, I already read that one. Sorry. Tessa Ryan says, during my workout, I listened to you guys or to the Modern Wisdom. That'd be great if you and Modern Wisdom made an episode together. Happy holidays, everyone. That's Chris Williamson, I think.
Oh, Chris Williamson. Yeah. Okay, I do like him. We have, I think, we've
talked about
having him on. Yeah, so maybe we will in the future.
And I think we are actually caught up now, so.
Okay, guys, that's perfect timing because I have a meeting in like 4 minutes. Guys, thank you so much for watching the show. We greatly appreciate it. If you liked this video, like, subscribe, click the notification bell to be notified every single time we're live. That's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 1 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern. Plus, we post videos for you guys every single day. Tomorrow's video is about diversity hires. That's what tomorrow's video is about. It's going to be a much lighter subject than the one we've covered today. And we'll be back on Friday to be live and sit down and have a new discussion with you guys. Will that be a part 2? Let us know in the chat down below. Will it be rapid fire news stories? Let us know in the chat down below. Guys, we encourage healthy debate, healthy discussion, you can do so in the comments underneath this video. Keep it classy, y'all. Keep it respectful. That's what we like on this show. That's what we enjoy. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.